I like peanut butter. I like peanut butter. Peanut butter. I like peanut butter. I like peanut butter.
You're listening to CreepGeeks podcast.
Peanut butter. I like peanut butter.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/CheapGeek. So it begins again. Welcome back to the CreepGeeks podcast. This is episode number 100.
The Halloween show.
Yeah. Dying here. All right, so welcome back to CreepGeeks podcast. This is episode number 100.
It's the Halloween show.
The Halloween show.
Happy Halloween, everyone.
Yes, and in full disclosure, we did a live stream where we recorded our Halloween show in great and agonizing detail, only to find out there was a tremendous echo out of the entire thing, so we decided to go ahead and redo that and do the audio show. So, if you guys are listening to the audio podcast and you've downloaded it and you listened off iTunes and Google Play Music and iHeartRadio and
Spotify.
SoundCloud and Spotify and all that jazz, very much appreciate it and do appreciate you tuning in. This is our episode number 100, the Halloween show.
Big deal. It's episode 100.
100. And we do very much appreciate everybody that tunes in and listens. And we do appreciate everybody that watches in the live stream. It happens every Sunday on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if you feel so inclined and you want to watch, you certainly can. We do have links, and you can follow our Facebook page.
At CreepGeeks Facebook page.
Yeah.
Group.
And you can,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the official Facebook page, which is the CreepGeeks podcast.
Yeah.
So
you can definitely tune in, and you can find a link, and you can watch and listen and learn and participate and all that good stuff. So pretty much you can find us pretty much anywhere that does a podcast. And wherever you can listen to a podcast, you can pretty much find us as well. And we do appreciate it. And if you want to give us a call and leave the show a message, you can certainly do that. That number is
575-208-4025.
That's right.
Yep. And if you'd like to leave us a review, we'll put a link in the show notes for this podcast episode.
Yes. And we accept only the finest quality 3 to 5 star reviews wherever you watch or listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps us grow.
Sure does. And you can subscribe to us on YouTube and click the notification bell after you hit subscribe, and you'll be notified when we go live and do a live stream. So you can check us out there. You can also check us out and listen to the podcast or watch the live stream rebroadcast of the podcast at our website, CreepGeeks.com. And that's pretty much about it.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in.
Very nice. So we went through and did the original show, and we did a live stream. We talked about lots of stuff, and we had participation and all that good stuff that came in. But there was a terrible, terrible echo, and I couldn't figure out what it was because I didn't catch it until the very end. And what I found was, for some reason, our recording software and our recording hardware was duplicating audio channels as the show went on.
So that was a pretty long show.
It was very strange for that to actually happen, and we were talking about some creepy stuff. Related? I don't think so, but you never know.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we had a weird foghorn noise happen during the live broadcast.
It was very strange.
So, very creepy Halloween
super creepy,
so far.
Creepy. And we also set out a big bowl of candy for all the trick-or-treaters with a little note on the door that says, "Live recording in progress. Please don't knock. Just take candy and go away." And, nobody took any candy.
And we even wrote the sign in Spanish, too.
Yeah.
Nope. Nothing. Maybe they were scared by my poor Spanish skills.
Probably. You probably insulted people.
No, I checked Google.
Oh, Google Translate. There you go. Because I'm sure that's as entirely accurate as it could be.
Silencio.
Like, do donde este verde? Like, what?
What?
So anyway, we're going to do the podcast. We're going to talk about stuff that we talked about earlier. It's going to be good. It's going to be a fantastic time. And we're going to talk about all sorts of different things that we normally do. We are a podcast, and we talk about offbeat news stuff. We explore the strange and stupid, the paranormal, and tech topics circulating the web. And if you've been sticking around, and this is our episode number 100, very much appreciated. Starting with season 3, episode number 101, things will be a little different.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're still going to do some of the segments that we like to do, but we're going to spend more time concentrating on one or two particular subjects and talk about those.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're still going to find the stuff that we think to be interesting and the humorous stuff, but we'll also start researching topics a little bit more thoroughly and spend a little bit more time talking about those particular topics.
Cool.
Yeah. You know, like, I don't know, the deer man.
Well, I know we're planning on doing some more stuff about Sasquatch, especially here in New Mexico.
Yes.
So, and maybe some other weird New Mexico creatures.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to topics like this stuff where you can do research, it's never ending.
Yeah.
And we don't want to limit ourselves into just talking about like ghosts or UFO or funny stuff we see on the internet. So we're going to give it a go.
Everything 14.
So. Yes. And so if you have a suggestion for us, please send us an email.
Yeah. Contact@creepgeeks.com.
Yeah. Or Greg.
Or Greg
at creepgeeks.com.
Or Omi at creepgeeks.com.
Yeah.
You can also reach out to us on social media. In fact, earlier today we had somebody reach out and share a story via Instagram. That was really cool.
Yeah. Direct message through Instagram. It's okay if you want to do that kind of thing. We don't have any heartburn over it.
Yeah. Or our Facebook page. That's another great place to interact with us, too. We've got a pretty lively Facebook group, CreepGeeks. Mostly lots of interesting stuff we find. We also get a lot of our news suggestions from there. So, yeah. Join in the conversation.
Very nice. Okay, so if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know we like to do interesting random factoids. And this one being Halloween, we thought... I'm moving my coffee cup off the desk.
Oh, okay.
So I don't create any issues. We don't want any random acts of spillage.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so we figured this interesting random fact would be history of Halloween.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you want to go ahead? Go for it.
Sure.
All right.
So, the history of Halloween. Ancient Celtic farmers believed that one day a year, the season of life meets the season of death. These two seasons would collide, and during that day, spirits walked the earth. That day was called Samhain, or Samhain, which means summer's end. Now, the Druidic priests, they would try to predict if their villages would survive the winter. The ordinary Celts, they would light bonfires and they would use demonic disguises. And these would repel the spirits, and it would protect themselves from spirits that walked the earth that day. Now, Pope Gregory the Third, he established something called All Hallows Day on November 1st to honor all the saints, past and future. This also helped to absorb the Celts and their Druidic ways into their culture or society. Eventually, Samhain became known as All Hallows Eve or Halloween. Now, Puritans that arrived in America, they left all those traditions behind because, granted, you know, the Puritans, they were fleeing certain religious persecution and basically traditions they didn't agree with. And that's pretty much how it stayed in America. Anything that was kind of around that season was usually typecast as witchcraft or something like that. And things stayed the same until the Irish potato famine sent about 1 million Irish to the Americas. Now, that slowly changed culture here in America. When the Irish came, they brought their folklore with them. And that folklore changed to suit the times. And the bonfires, you know, they turned into fires within gourds or jack-o'-lanterns. We've talked on previous episodes how the original jack-o'-lanterns were like squash and weird gourd-looking things.
Turnips. They were turnips.
And kind of creepy, you know. But that was a way to disguise what was formerly a bonfire that would protect your family. And now it's a jack-o'-lantern on your doorstep, you know. right at the threshold, protects your household. And then those creepy, scary disguises the Celts wore, those turned into scary costumes. Now,
Yes.
the tradition of treats, which came from going to homes and praying for the souls of loved ones, also known as souling, this would happen, and in exchange for doing so, you'd get these little small cakes. That turned into the candy we now give. Now, capitalism, unfortunately, it has its pros and cons. It's made Halloween a very popular holiday here in America, but it's also made it a very profitable one. So it's one of the top, or one of the biggest holidays here in America. I think both like profit wise and as far as how many people celebrate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So that's just a little, very, very quick history of Halloween. Granted, there's many other aspects of it. Like here in New Mexico, we have Dios los Muertos, which is the day
Close enough, Day of the Dead.
Yeah, I know. Day of the Dead, and it's super cool because New Mexico takes Halloween super seriously, and I love it. It translates into 3 or 4 separate days: All Souls Day, All Hallows Day, Day of the Souls, Day of the Dead, things like that. So Halloween almost turns into like 3 days or 4 days of celebration.
Yeah.
And so just a little bit about Halloween.
Well, there you go. This little random interesting factoid. Really wasn't that random because it's Halloween. Mm-hmm. But, we actually asked in the last couple of podcasts for people to contribute some stuff that we can talk about for Halloween. And they did. Now, that being said, if you have anything interesting you want to talk about or want us to talk about or would like to submit, you can certainly do that. Just send us an email and let us know. But we had some people submit some stories that they had, some experience, and we thought we'd talk about them because we said we would. And for those people that did contribute, we're going to send them something. So if they contact us via email, as they were instructed to do, they're going to get a big old CreepGeek sticker.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Very cool indeed. So this first story is from Jay. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And why is my computer? There it is. My computer is just being silly.
Actually,
I'm going to play some scary music. That'll fix it.
It's been Google Drive that's been acting weird for me.
Yeah, it's Google Docs being weird for me. Maybe it's something completely different.
Maybe Google's haunted.
Maybe it's a denial of service. Scary.
Hush.
Yeah, it's just being weird. So, okay. I can't even get to my document. Go ahead, Omi. Take care of it.
No, there you are.
Okay. See how she doesn't want to participate in the show? See that? Scary music. Okay, so Jason and a little thing. Mm-hmm. Right. Ready?
Yeah.
One night at the Whaley House, which is supposed to be America's most haunted house, I was hanging out by myself to relax. Often I would go there to get my mind off of things. I was sitting on a brick wall, right? Mm-hmm. Where there was no one around. It was just me. It was also the middle of the night. And here's where it gets creepy. He says, I felt something touch my shoulder. It felt just like a hand reaching out and touching me, only there was no one around me. And I felt a cold breeze, and the breeze was more cold than temperature outside.
Oh, gosh.
See, I don't like that, man. I always think of like Scooby-Doo when they're standing there and they're cruising through the haunted house and the hand reaches out from the cupboard to try to grab them,
Yeah.
He said he had another experience. Well, another experience inside the Whaley House was at night. I was in the house, I was taking pictures, and I found dog prints under the bed in a room. Mm-hmm. And there were no dog prints on the floor when I was in that room, but they came up on the camera when I took the picture. He doesn't have the pictures anymore. And he said, I knew the housekeeper of the house, and he let a group of us in, and there were a couple that had some experiences similar to the ones that he had.
Yeah.
And he said, I've had more experiences at the house, but that would take all night. Yeah. So my thought is, what kind of weirdo that just sits around in a haunted house by himself at night?
Well,
evidently Jay.
If you look up the Whaley House,
it's kind of poking at him.
Yeah. And plus, if you look up the Whaley House, it's pretty much right there in Old Town San Diego. So it's not like he trekked 2 hours to get to this haunted location.
Yeah, it's in Old Town.
So he's just probably hanging out, kind of like here
just
we have.
Chilling.
Old Town Albuquerque, people are walking around there all the time. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. So it's just cool for him because he's got a haunted house in his old town. So yeah. But
Californians always have the best, right?
that cold touch and the cold breeze thing is the one that always gets me.
I don't like that.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there looking, and I was thinking about one of the experiences I had. And I was in the Navy. And when I first got in, I was stationed in Charleston. And at the time, my family was in Norfolk, Virginia. So, because I was getting ready to transfer and actually transfer to Norfolk, Virginia. So I was finished up my time on the ship in Charleston, USS Sims DDG-18, before I got up to Norfolk.
Okay.
And what I would do is when I had like the weekend or a 3-day weekend, I would drive to Virginia. It's an 8-hour drive. It's 400 miles. And I remember having the midwatch, which went from 12 to 4 o'clock in the morning. And then I was able to leave that day. So I didn't really get any sleep because the night before I'd stayed up and packed, for the weekend. And then I stood my watch. And then I left, and it was like, I don't know, maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was driving down the road, and one of the things that I had in my car, and I still have in my car, is a CB radio.
Cool.
And the CB radio was good because when you got to Virginia, you weren't allowed to use radar detectors. And the faster I could get there, the more time I could spend. So, of course, me being young, decided to roll out Days of Thunder. You know what I'm saying? So, I would keep the CB on because the truck drivers, because back then in the 90s, this was like 1991, maybe 92. I think it was 91. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it was 90. Anyway, 1990, 91, truck drivers still use CB radios because cell phones weren't that popular. They were really expensive, so it was still a CB radio. They would tell you where cops would sit.
Cool.
So I'm rolling down the road, and I'm driving very quickly. And I passed the truck driver, and I'd been really, really tired. And, the next thing I remember was this truck driver just screaming at me over the CB radio, calling me cuss words, telling me, what are you doing, stupid, you're going to die, all this crazy stuff. So, evidently I went to sleep. And when I heard this truck driver cussing at me, and I opened up my eyes, I was off the highway heading towards a bridge abutment.
Oh.
Like really fast. I wasn't going like 20 miles an hour. I was going like 65, 75 miles an hour.
Oh, gosh.
And I seen it, and I was like, oh, man. So I jerked the wheel and had to drive across all the grass and get back up on the highway. And I was like, man. And once I got all steadied out, I was like, man, phew. I grabbed my CB and told the truck driver, I was like, wow, man, I appreciate you yelling at me because, I wasn't sure I was going to make it. And I got no response. And when I looked down, I realized why I got no response. The CB was not on.
Oh.
It wasn't turned on. I didn't even have it plugged in.
What in the world?
Yeah, but I heard that guy as clear as day, this truck driver, yelling at me over the CB radio. Crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, and so I slowed down, and as the truck driver went by me, he honked his horn and just kept on going. So it's like he's seen it. It was just me and him. We were the only ones on the road. So he had to see it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, but the CB was off.
That's crazy.
And I don't know. But yeah, wasn't my time, I guess.
Good thing. I mean, you're here now.
Yep. Good for you, huh?
Yeah.
Ha-ha. Take that. That's nice. Let's play some music.
Okay.
Yeah. This next story is from a person who did not want to be identified,
Yes.
who I accidentally identified. I must apologize to them. So keep it in tune with that. I won't identify him this time. Okay. Yeah, because I don't think Brian would like that. Oh, I did it again. All right. So his story goes, I grew up. Okay, I was getting all ready for it. Now you want to read it. Go ahead.
So the story goes, I grew up in a house where the previous owner committed suicide in the house by blowing his head off with a gun. He was known as Mr. Fiddler. At least that's what we were all told shortly after moving in. There was always odd things happening, water turning on by itself, shadows moving, and an all-around feeling of darkness. One late night, the entire family was in bed, and the fire alarm located in the hallway outside of the bedrooms went off. Most of us met in the hallway to investigate, and my dad couldn't get it to turn off. Now, this was back in the 70s before fire alarms were hardwired and ran on batteries alone. My dad took the battery out to silence it, and we all found. A few minutes later, the alarm went off again without the battery. It scared the hell out of us at the time. Thinking back, I wonder if it was real or if it was my parents messing with us. But they're both dead now, so I can't ask them. I guess I'll never know.
Sad.
Yes, that's kind of creepy though.
Yeah. Maybe it was Mr. Fiddler.
Yeah. But I don't know. The fact that it didn't have the battery in it and it still went off, that confuses me.
Don't be confused.
Oh.
It's okay.
Okay. Now, should I read the next one or do you want to read it?
No, go ahead. I'm choking over here.
So the same listener sent us another story that happened to him. And this was later on, much later, in 1988. I was hanging out at my brother-in-law's house in a rural part of Phoenix, Arizona. It was getting late into the night, and we were standing out in his backyard talking. We saw an extremely bright white light in the sky very far in the distance to the east. It looked like a helicopter shining its light directly at us, but it was way too far away for that. It wasn't moving, it was just hovering there in the sky. We thought it was unusual and it had our attention, but we weren't concerned at that point. We were just trying to figure out what it was. Now, a few minutes later, a second light of the same exact brightness and distance appeared, but to the north of us. Now there was two of them, and we were getting concerned. About a minute after spotting the second light, it started heading straight towards us. Fast, very fast. It flew right above us, less than 100 yards, and stopped in mid-air. It was kind of triangular, with lights on the bottom, and it was larger than any airplane I'd ever seen. It didn't make a single sound. After hovering for about 20 seconds, it turned towards the other light in the east, and at first slowly went toward it, then sped away super fast. Both lights then disappeared. We were terrified and we ran into the house, not believing what we just saw. We both knew that it just wasn't an airplane and there was no way it could be a helicopter. What stood out to us the most was how close it came to us without making a single sound, and how it hovered with absolutely no movement. We were both convinced that we had witnessed a UFO. And I love that story because it's from the same time period where there was a big peak in UFO activity in Arizona. Later on in the 90s, there was the Phoenix Lights, but even before that, many witnesses had spotted triangular type UFOs or just unidentifiable aircraft in that weird shape with no noise. So it's cool that we have a listener and actually someone that we're friends with who saw something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really enjoy this experience. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of a bone to pick with that person because I've known him for a long time, and I talk about this stuff with him a lot, and never once volunteered that. I think he may have said I've seen something one time, and he left it at that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But thank you so much for sharing that experience. Again, if we read your story, send us an email, contact@creepgeeks.com, or reach out to us directly, and we're going to get you that sticker pack.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm trying right now to figure out how to bring up direct messages on Instagram. There we go.
Yeah.
Because one of the people reached out to us today, as you were saying earlier, and shared a story. And this person, contacted me and basically said, I just heard your YouTube on Bigfoot, right? And I had a couple of Bigfoot experiences at and around the Gilman Tunnels. And we talked about hearing a baby cry at Gilman Tunnels.
Yeah, so creepy.
This is in New Mexico, where Jemez is. Jemez National Forest, or is that what it's called?
Yeah. Actually, Jemez National Recreation Area, which holds Jemez Forest, Jemez Falls, and is within the Santa Fe National Forest.
Yes.
So.
And so he said, I heard your YouTube on Bigfoot, and reached out, right? So I was like, man, that's kind of crazy. What happened? And I said, we're going to be talking about our experiences on the next podcast. It'd be cool if you, if you want to include yours. So I said, if you want, right? And he said he just responded back with it, and so we talked about it. And he said, well, the first one was when I was younger. I was about 11 years old, camping with a fellow Boy Scout and his family by the Gilman Tunnels. And we've camped there before, and the Gilman Tunnels is where we heard a baby cry, and we also have camped further back where it's just been super creepy.
Yeah.
Where my dog Ben stared at a tree stump.
All night.
Off in the field all night long, and I looked at it, and I was like, dude, that's a tree stump, go to bed, because he was sitting there. And the next morning, the tree stump was gone. And
he was convinced it wasn't, and he stayed up all night for us.
Yeah. So he's out there camping, right? Mm-hmm. 11 years old. He's camping with his camp buddy and their family. And he goes, I asked my friend's mom where I should go to use the bathroom. And she told me to run down the road around this big bush, right? So he did. And he says, and when he went, something started screaming at him.
Oh, my gosh.
And he goes, the story gets better, but it's a long one. And the whole family that I was camping with heard the screams, and we had to leave the camp at 4 a.m.
To make that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 a.m.
To leave at 4 a.m. I mean, it's dark out there. It is pitch black out there. To make the decision that late at night, I'm not going to wait the 2 hours for sunrise. I'm not going to, try to hunker down. We are leaving. That's pretty serious. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm choking on some Halloween candy over here. Hold on. Okay, so when I read this, it kind of gave me the chills because we've talked to at least 2 other people who've experienced the same thing.
I had a chat with somebody.
Screaming, something screaming at them, thrashing around the camp until they leave, and they just leave.
There's somebody I had a just informal chat about a year ago on Instagram, and her husband are way more outdoorsy than I am, and they would do primitive camping out in Jemez, a little bit farther back from where we camped. And they actually packed up their stuff and went closer to civilization one night because the same screams didn't sound like mountain lion, and her husband knows what mountain lions sound like.
They have a pretty distinctive scream.
Yeah, and they were just so terrified that now, I think they both have kids now, they won't take the kids there.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of going there anymore for camping either.
So,
okay, so we also had a different story where he says the second one was that something dropped a rock on my windshield as he was driving through the tunnels. He said, I pulled over and ran up the hill and looked around for about 15 minutes. If it was a person, I would have seen him. And the area he's talking about, it's pretty barren all the way to the top. So if you get out and you run up there, you're going to see somebody. It's not like they can just disappear.
How does he...
What?
I'm trying to figure out how to get to the top right there.
As you get out of the tunnels, you shimmy up the side, man. That's just kind of what you do.
Super athletic then. Okay.
Or athletic enough, somebody just drop a rock on your windshield.
Yeah.
And the thing is that as you're going through the tunnels, I think it would be hard pressed to have a rock just drop on your windshield.
Yeah.
I think somebody's going to throw it at you. But, that area does have a little bit of rock slide, so.
And it's common for, like, maybe small pebbles or water to drop while you're driving through, but nothing significant. And we've had stories about, like, this was a rock,
Yeah.
So
he also says, I have another story about our elk hunt. If you have time, you can give me a call. And we are going to call, and we're going to talk, and we're going to interview some local people about their experiences with, like, Sasquatch and weird stuff that happens in this area. So we're going to add him to the list. But he did give me a little bit of a disclaimer, which I thought was actually kind of cool. It was unnecessary, but he says, also, I'm a retired city employee, and I had to pass the psychological evaluation to get my job. And I hope that helped on the honesty side. And it's not required, and I do appreciate it. But it kind of lends towards, a lot of people experience stuff they don't want to say anything.
True.
Because people think they're crazy or weird or whatever. And I think it's a lot easier now because people can talk about stuff because I think a lot of it's more accepted. you know, with everything from the shows that we have, like Finding Bigfoot to the ghost shows and everything else. I think it's a little bit more open, but I do appreciate the fact that he figured, you know, he needed to drop that in there, but, you know.
But, like, even me, I am very much the skeptic. For anybody who listens to the show, you know that I get very skeptical when Greg reads certain articles or when we get certain articles for the show. Yet, I had a tremendous amount of paranormal experiences growing up when my brother and my family, we lived in a certain house. And I don't really talk about it because some of it is so out there that you're like, okay, something's wrong with that family, or something's wrong with her, or maybe there's something else like drugs involved in the household thing, which is funny because that same thing happened to that super haunted, the Amityville house, you know?
Yeah.
It's drugs and a dysfunctional family. So it makes me not want to talk about it, but it happened, and it is beyond belief, and it was a personal paranormal experience.
Yeah. Plus, if you told me all that stuff, I'd think you're kind of weird. Right.
Well, I mean, and you know, earlier on the live recording, I did share one of those experiences that got brought up, and it was the fact that on top of the paranormal activity, what we started to notice is that it would happen in waves. We'd have a brief lull, and then things would amp up over the span of a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and then it would be a whole weekend of absolute just terrible stuff happening. And this was a very bad week where things were just getting really bad as far as the activity and things happening. But I was having problems sleeping that weekend, or that whole week. And then towards the weekend, I couldn't sleep. And the reason I couldn't sleep was because my mom was a Barbie collector. She collected Barbies from around the world and antique Barbies and stuff like that. She also eventually started collecting porcelain dolls. But she tried to transfer that love of Barbie to me, and I've never liked Barbie, and I've never liked dolls. In fact, dolls kind of creep me out. But my bedroom, being a little, like, 7-year-old kid, was just basically shelves upon shelves. Just, I want to say there was at least 8 shelf rows just full of Barbies, over 50 Barbies that were either in their box or on Barbie stands, so they were stand up and posed. And I couldn't sleep. For some reason, I was convinced that the Barbies were either staring at me or something was staring at me. And I would peek my head out from above the covers, because I used to sleep with the covers over my head, and I would just tune in to these Barbies and their eyes. And it got to the point where I just couldn't sleep. I was just like, no, I can't do this. The Barbies, this whole room is creeping me out. And I left my room, grabbed my blanket, left my room, tried to go into my little brother's room, because sometime I would sleep in my little brother's room. Well, this time I went to grab the handle, and I couldn't get into my little brother's room. The door wouldn't open. And I knocked, I couldn't get in. Finally, I decided to give up, and I walked back in to my bedroom, and all the turned around. They were all turned facing away from me. So they were all facing the wall, which led me to scream, which led me to wake up the whole house. My mom came out yelling at me, blah, 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 you know, go back to bed, blah, blah, blah. And then the Barbies would turn back around, and that just messed me up. So, yeah.
That's nice.
No, it's...
That's nice to have creepy Barbies.
No, I didn't like the dolls. I didn't like the Barbies. We had porcelain dolls, just things that just would creep me out, and they would move, or they'd turn around, or they'd face me. So, yeah. We had a porcelain doll that kept falling off a shelf. You know, things like that. It doesn't explain anything, because the porcelain doll would fall off the shelf at the same time every night. You know, that type of stuff.
Creepy.
Yeah.
All right, well, speaking of creepy, we're going to take a second, and we're going to take a quick break. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Audible is an audio entertainment that entertains, educates, and inspires. For you, the listeners of the CreepGeeks podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/cheapgeek. Again, that's audibletrial.com/cheapgeek for your free audiobook.
And we're back, and thanks for listening to the CreepGeeks podcast. Very much appreciate you tuning in with us today, episode number 100. So it begins again. So we're both sitting here choking to death on something. I have no idea what's going on.
Too much sugar.
Too much sugar. The Halloween candy is delicious. We had exactly nobody show up and take candy from us, so that just leaves more candy for us. And you know, if I want to eat chocolate cake, I will. If I want to eat candy, I will. And in full disclosure, after our first podcast that we recorded live and did all that stuff, and we realized that nobody took the candy. We ate a whole bunch. We're like, yay, candy. Yum, yum, yum. And now we're paying the price.
Yeah.
And speaking of candy, my favorite candy now that I'm older is that old waxed stuff. Like all wrapped up. Yeah, you know, like orange and the black wrapped junk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like molasses
You know what I
and
miss?
peanut butter. They're super tasty now that I'm older.
The fake teeth gums, they were like vampire teeth.
They're
It
like
was
wax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually crave one of those right now, just so I could eat it for all of 2 seconds before the flavor changes and goes bad. So.
That's kind of gross.
I know, but it was such an interesting minty flavor.
That's right. I think it was like wintergreen or something, or maybe spearmints.
But my favorite trick-or-treat candy, even though I'm older now and it's actually kind of painful to eat, is Heath candy bars.
Yeah, those are
Little
pretty
tiny
tasty.
ones, little bite-sized
Little
ones.
toffee.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So yeah, what's your favorite candy? You should send us an email and let us know. But I did notice that when you get older, your candy taste changes. When you're young, it's like sour and sweet and all that stuff. You get a little older, you're like, this molasses and peanut butter is fantastic. It's simple.
So
Like me.
was I just an old lady automatically? I mean,
Yes.
because I grew up during the 80s when they had like those little toxic waste barrels of sour candy and Airheads and stuff like that, and I was never a big fan of those. But I always liked the chocolates and sometimes the cinnamons or the peppermints, things like that. But never the fad candy. Now I'm older though, I am eating a lot of Starburst.
Yeah. Starburst.
And
Delicious.
I did talk about on the live show, we did mention the myth of poisoned Halloween candy. And this was an article off of Vox. But basically, poison pins and needles and Halloween candy, it's probably a hoax. And this hoax was actually linked to just some urban legends that go all the way back to World War II. It's, shenanigans of older adolescents doing things like giving prank candy to kids. And communities figured that if they embraced Halloween and turned it into a mainstream holiday that children could participate in, the pranks would slowly go away. And the idea spread and more communities participated, but fears of dangerous candy and other hazards also began to pop up fairly quickly. The oldest versions they know of tainted candy or treacherous trick-or-treating are stories from the early 1950s about people heating up pennies on skillets and then dumping the hot pennies into the outstretched hands of little trick-or-treaters.
That's pretty dirty.
That is awful.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, because when I was a little kid, we always hit this one house and the lady always gave us 5 pennies, Now, that penny prank or, devious thing, this morphed into the 1960s with poison and pins being in candy bars. Now, there's no actual evidence for poison candy scares. In a study published in 1993, they looked for credible reports of poison candy, finding no plausible cases up to that point. Since then, researchers, they continue to scour for feasible reports, but again, no credible cases. The closest thing that comes to poison candy is an account from 1974, which back then, an 8-year-old unfortunately died after eating a pixie stick that was laced with cyanide. It turns out, though, the culprit wasn't a stranger handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. It was the child's father, who apparently did it to get life insurance money, which is just terrible.
Yeah, it's not cool.
Now, there have been 100 reports since 1958 of pins, needles, and razors. And most of those can't be so now the this article is that there's a theory to this situation of this poison candy or tainted candy or stranger, danger in candy. And that is, we live in a world of apocalyptic scenarios. Here we are having a safe, healthy, longer lives than any other people in history. And we're constantly imagining if this could all in a nanosecond. Ultimately, this fear is us translating the concept of anxiety into something tangible for our children so that they can grasp the concept of anxiety. Which is, it's a way for us to pass on to humans, younger persons in society, that in a second, tragedy can strike. Nothing free and kind, Halloween candy celebration, is without consequence. And that's horrible.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's so depressing. One day, the news website shared an article, the difference between sweet and meth.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? And then people are still, especially people from non-cannabis, medical cannabis states, people are still perpetuating the careful, edibles might be in your kid's candy. First off, that's stupid. Second, do you know how expensive medical marijuana is? They have no idea. You can buy marijuana for as little as $12. No. No. Second, I mean, 3 edibles, like marijuana candy edibles, is about $27 here in New Mexico. So, and that's like for 3 little lozenges, like hard candy type things. And that's for the medical cannabis people. They have a quota, so they can't walk in there, I need a bag of marijuana candy. They can't do that.
Yeah.
So, in fact, if you hit your quota, the police and the department are called.
So you got people like, oh, I don't have any more candy. Let me just give them some weed.
And I'm not sure if it's the police.
Let me give them some meth.
The authorities are notified. So, I mean, you can't just... I can't...
A lot of it scare you. You're like, oh, be careful.
Yeah. So this whole, there's nothing free or fun without consequence. It's just terrible, and it makes me depressed. And that's truly scary.
Yeah.
But I think, what's the weirdest thing you've ever gotten in your Halloween?
Well, let me see. I'm 48, and I went Halloween trick-or-treating every year that I was allowed and was able to, and I never got nothing weird.
Really?
Yep. No AK-47 in my bag of candy. No razor blade apples. No candy injected with hepatitis blood. Yeah, nothing.
So the year that
I just got candy.
Yeah.
Some of it became unwrapped over time. Some of it was garbage candy, but I just got candy.
Yeah. The year that in the 80s where the scare about razor blades was out.
You know, I got some like pennies and stuff like that, and sometimes crayons and but you know, toothbrushes from kind of sick weirdo.
I thought those were cool.
Yeah, they are cool, but at the same time, it's kind of like you know, it's kind of weird. But I think if I went trick or treating with kids these days and some weirdo was handing out toothbrushes, I'd be really inspecting those.
Well, the toothbrushes
you know what I mean?
I got were individually wrapped.
Well, I know, but I mean, you know, what if it was unwrapped, or you don't really know where does these little toothbrushes come from? You know, I don't know. I think I'd be more leery of that, you know, than like a Snickers bar.
Well,
because Snickers really satisfies.
Like I was saying, in the 80s when the razor blade thing happened, my mom went into overdrive.
Well, that's the thing. It's been around since not just the 80s, like the 60s. Because
that's cool. Yeah, but like this lady gave me a really pretty apple. I was just in love. I was fascinated with how big and pretty this apple was. For all we know, there could have been a Disney curse on it, but my mom took that away. She took away all the raisins that were me and my little brother's bags. We couldn't have those. But then,
what kind of sick weirdo gives out raisins?
So I was heartbroken because I really wanted that apple. And then what I didn't mention on the live show was the year before that, I had gotten the weirdest thing for trick or treat. This lady gave all of us who came to our door, she had all of us come in and she gave us all chicken noodle soup. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, and my mom was okay with it. So she gave us chicken noodle soup and she gave us all like 50 cents.
Nice.
Yeah. That was the weirdest thing I had ever gotten. So, yeah.
One of the coolest things I've seen was one of the dads dressed up like a hobo.
Yeah.
And he went around with a shot glass.
Okay.
And he would say trick or treat, and he would, you know, hand out the shot glass. And by the time, he was only gone for a couple hours.
Yeah.
By the time he got home, he was done. Because it was like he would just say trick or treat, and he'd show him the shot glass, and then all the dads were like, "Hold on a second," and he'd come back and give him a shot. So by the time he got back home, he was just done, and his wife was just super pissed. And you know, because this was in Navy housing, I grew up in Navy housing, so you know, in order to live there, you had to have children. And so, yeah, man. And so you'd walk your kids around and stuff like that. But his name was Mike, and he was like, I mean, he looked good as a hobo.
Yeah.
Right. Which now you probably couldn't go as a hobo because you'd probably culturally appropriate the hobo culture or something like that. Yeah, appropriate, whatever that is. But he would hand out that little shot glass and go trick or treat. And, you know, some people would just look at him and give him a real stink eye, like, how dare you, you know, kind of thing. And he wouldn't get anything at all. But more often, though, the dads were like, hold on a second there, fella, and would come back, and he didn't know what he was getting.
Oh, no.
And it wasn't for him to turn it down, because that would be rude. But, yeah, he was just wiped out by the time he got back. And we were gone for a couple hours. I know he got at least 8-9 shots, at least. You know, sometimes he's like, you know.
I'm thinking more. If it's Navy housing, I'm thinking.
Yeah, but I mean, you know. I know one of them, he said one of them was 151 at least, and he got a couple grain shots. But, yeah, I thought that was actually pretty funny because I was cruising around, you know, with my kids, too. I was like, whoa. So he was just done, man.
Genius, though.
Yeah, he came back, he was like, oh. It was fantastic. Well, if you did that now, you'd probably get the cops called on you or something. So, yeah.
Huh.
All right, so we're going to take a second and play a quick commercial. We didn't play it last time. We're going to play it this time, so stick around.
The following is brought to you by yourwebdesigner.info. Yourwebdesigner.info offers prices and services that are unrivaled by any competition. And yourwebdesigner.info will customize your website to suit your personal and your business needs. CreepGeek listeners, check this out. Yourwebdesigner.info has a promotion going on that is sugar sweet. $115 for one custom web design, 1 month of hosting, one logo, and your domain web address? Well, guess what? It's included. For more information, you can visit us on the internet at yourwebdesigner.info, that's INFO, or call us at 858-683-3657.
Very nice. We actually support local business and small business and micro business owners. So there you go.
And we'll put the link for that commercial in the show notes to the podcast. So if you are interested in affordable web design and web packages, just check the show notes and click on the link.
Yeah, give them a shot. Why not?
Yep. And if you are a small business and you're interested in getting your commercial on the show or some sort of endorsement, go ahead and reach out to us. And that's going to be contact@creepgeeks.com. Attention, Gregor Omi.
Yeah, we'll check it out. Why not?
Yep.
Help people. That's what we do. We're givers. Speaking of givers, this guy in this article I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes like this. And this is from Phantoms and Monsters, and the title of it says, Deer Man Approaches Talk to Virginia Eyewitness. So I was like, what? So I had to read it. And evidently this person called in and was actually talking to a podcast host and relayed this story to him. And the guy's name is Paul.
Okay.
And Paul is from Orange, Virginia, which is about an hour south of Washington, D.C. And he called to comment on his bizarre encounter, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of goes like this. Ready?
Sure.
I'm going to try to pretend that this guy has a Virginia accent. I don't know if it's going to work. We'll see. He said, this happened to me in fall of 2017. I was out back sitting on the patio having a cigarette, having some drinks, talking to my friend on the cell phone. It was about 10 o'clock at night. It was very dark. And the yard goes back really steep down to the lake, and there's a lot of the woods and then stuff in between, like brush. It's pretty thick. Well, suddenly I heard something run across the yard right through all that thick brush. And I said, what was that? And my friend was like, what? And I said, I don't know. Something just ran through the yard. And it was big, whatever it was. To me, I couldn't figure out why it ran where it could, because it could have been easier just to run a little further down by the lake where it had free run. Didn't have to go through all that brush because it's all open down there. So I said, well, maybe it's a deer, I guess. But I've never seen a deer here in this spot before, and it just seemed kind of weird, a weird time for it to be running. Anyway, I kind of forgot about it, and I kept talking to my friend.
Huh.
Suddenly I heard a noise down by the dock, and I was like, there it is again. And for some reason, my first thought was, there's some kids playing around down there. And I don't know why I thought that, but that's the first thing I thought. Anyway, I got up and I went running towards the stairs to go down on the dock. And they're steep stairs. And when I get to the stairs, I get to the top of them, and I look down, and there's this thing running up the stairs towards me.
Oh.
And I was just in shock. And Jimmy asked what he saw. And he says, it was like a person, but it had a deer head.
Okay.
Yeah. And Jimmy asked if it was like had a human body and the head of a deer, and yes, and it was running up the stairs so fast it was crazy. It could even move that fast, and it was staring right at me. And I'm just standing there, and I'm staring at it, and it had red eyes. It actually had red eyes. And one friend said, that means it's demonic. I said, I don't think it was demonic or anything. Anyway, it ran right up at me, and it kept staring at me the whole time.
Okay.
It kept staring me in the eyes, and I was staring right back at it. Just kind of in shock, I guess. And when it got right up to me, it actually said something, and I don't know what it said. I just remember, I know it said something like 4 or 5 syllables, like real fast, and it seemed like it said words, but I don't know what they were. And then it ran, and it just kept running, and it ran right by me. And I could have touched it. It was within inches from me, and the stairway is only about 4 feet across. And so Jimmy asked if the man was wearing a deer head as a prank.
Yeah.
Just, it kind of makes sense, right?
Okay.
And it's like, and that's what a couple people said too. A couple of friends, that he told this guy. He's like, well, maybe it's just somebody really prank. And he said, I hardly told anybody about this because it's just the craziest thing I've ever seen. That someone suggested, but hey, no. It was moving way too fast. It was moving so fast. And when I thought about it later, it was like, man, it was almost like it was running through a different dimension or something. And that's all I could think.
Huh.
So Jimmy asked what he thought it was. He says, I think it was being that it had a human body and a deer head, and that the antlers weren't like deer around here. They weren't like the white-tailed deer. They were more spindly. They were spindly, and there was more like a lot like ties or branches than normal. He says, I actually saw a branch once, and I was like, oh my God, that branch looks like one of those deer antlers on that thing I saw. So... And, Jimmy told him, hey, the sighting was bizarre. And it was. He's like, man, like I said, I don't even tell my friends about that. And Jimmy asked if he saw lights or something else happen prior to the encounter. And he goes, I couldn't think of anything else like that. It could have been triggered or caused it. And he says, the next night, I was standing there at the top of the stairs, and it's nighttime, And it's dark, and I was like, I had goosebumps all over me, and I was like calling to myself. I was like, okay, wimp, Paul, you're a wimp. You're going to walk down these stairs and go to the dock. And I'm standing there looking down these stairs, and I went, nope, no, I'm not. But I'm okay with it now. And I went out and slept on the dock over the summer, and man, something did happen one night about 2:30 in the morning. I woke up, and I was laying there, and I started looking at my cell phone until I went back to sleep. About 50 feet away in the woods, I heard something big crashing around, and then I thought I heard it snorting.
Okay.
Like a deer snort.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the? And I just laid there. Like, I'm not getting to get up. I'm not going to go up the hill. I'm just going to lay here and be quiet. He said, I don't know what it was, but it sounded like a deer, and it was big. And so Jimmy asked about the body of the creature. Was it a human being from the neck down? And I was like, yeah. I think it was human from the neck down, but to be honest with you, I didn't look down at his legs. I was just staring at his face because it was running at me. And so Jimmy asked him, was it wearing clothes? He goes, no, I didn't notice any kind of clothes. And then Jimmy asked if the creature was completely naked. He goes, well, I can't be for sure. I can't say for sure. Like I said, I didn't look down. I mean, honestly, that thing locked its eyes on mine, and I locked eyes on his, and it was kind of dark too. Is that the weirdest thing or what?
It makes
so this
no
dude's
sense.
standing there, and he's like talking on the phone. He's out there smoking a cigarette, drinking some beers, and he hears something on the dock, and he goes to the steps, and this deer head thing is hauling ass up at it. So it makes me wonder if somebody had a deer head on and maybe was put up as a practical joke, or who knows, maybe it was just something weird come running up out of the woods.
The first thing I thought was, they have those very, very lifelike looking rubber masks that have the spindly little antlers on them. I mean, I just found one on Amazon.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about those masks, because I think a couple years ago, everybody on YouTube was wearing those masks for horses and
Yeah, like horse heads and stuff like that.
You can hear very clearly through those. So somebody can mutter or say something and you can understand them. So that's my first thought. The second thought is he didn't get a good enough look at everything else. Like, I didn't look at his legs, and
Well,
know
if he's
he
at the
was
top of the
naked,
stairs and this thing's coming running up at you, what are you gonna do? Mm-hmm. So yeah, and this was it was taken from Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on October 25th. So Jimmy is the podcaster.
Oh, okay.
He was asking this guy Paul questions. So I just thought it was kind of funny. He's in Virginia, He's like, yeah. I was just laying there like, I ain't going to move. I'm going to stay right here. But I've never heard of a deer man before, and I thought, oh, you know what? I got to put this in here because that's kind of weird. So I'm wondering after this, because Jimmy Church has a pretty big following on the internet since his radio show, how many, or if there's going to be more reports like this, just weird sort of hybrid man-beast pagan type stuff,
I don't know.
Yeah, kind of crazy.
Yeah, because it's not the normal. It's not even close to the normal.
No, but it's a deer head. I mean, I don't know if I would be looking to see what was going on, too. I mean, if I walked to this, if I heard something, I go look, and this thing's come running up at me and stuff, what would you do? I'd probably freak out.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that I would just judo chop it back down the stairs or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Well, my luck, it'd be the deer man running away from, like, the Godzilla man. It's like Godzilla monster come running up at him, chasing him. It's like, what chased him?
A turducken of fear, basically.
Maybe.
Godzilla.
You never know. That's like, if you're ever out in the woods and you see just a bear, like scared to death, go running past you, all freaked out. And you got to think to yourself, what the hell scared that bear that bad?
What story does that remind me of?
Well, I don't know what story, but it kind of happened to us when we were actually in Jimenez, and we were going back through all those trails, and that bear went running across the road, and that thing was hauling ass and was freaked out.
Yeah.
What scares a bear like that?
Hunters?
I don't know, man, but I mean scared, not like, let me run away.
I don't know.
Because bears are big.
Yeah, they are.
And they're scary. So.
And out here, they're pretty brazen.
Yeah, they can be, sure.
Well, we just drove up to Abiquiu, which, they have all those dumpsters for the rural areas. And it's in the news like every other week. Another bear got into the dumpster,
Yeah, well, I mean, that happens, because, Black Mountain, North Carolina, where we have family and all that stuff, I mean, everything's locked up. You got locks on everything because bears get into everything. Yeah. Same thing in Colorado as well. There's places where you can't go in to go camping with food, period. They're like, you got to lock it all up.
Oh.
Yeah. And like, even if you have like, food in like an RV and you're trying to visit some of those areas, they're like, nope, unload it.
Oh.
Then you have to put it in these big boxes, so you can't have any, because they will come and they'll get it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And people think the grizzly bears are the worst. But I think black bears are the worst. They have these little sharp claws, and they rip through all sorts of stuff, and they're trying to find something to eat. So they'll tear you to shreds just because they got these little sharp claws.
My little brother told me a lot of stories about the black bear problem in the area of California his friend lives in.
Well, they got black bear problems in North Carolina as well.
Yeah.
In Black Mountain, North Carolina, because nobody is allowed to police the bears anymore.
It's the same in California.
Yeah, like my grandpa was a big bear hunter,
His friend lost one of his best pit bulls that way. Actually, he thought he was letting the pit bulls out against a bear, and it turned out it was a mountain lion,
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't have let him out at all.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's just it, though. If you don't control that population, and they do get, humanized, they don't have any fear. They're not scared. They don't care.
Yeah.
It's like,
and that was the thing, because the creepy thing about them was the fact that these bears that were in this particular area of California, they all started walking upright.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what's going on? Don't worry about us.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well, Yogi the Bear, he walked upright.
Oh, gosh. He was also a cartoon.
Hey, it all starts somewhere, right? So, yeah. All right. All right, so I think that about wraps up what we're going to talk about today. Do very much appreciate you tuning in and listening, and thank you for being a part of our episode number 100. So, there you go.
Oh.
Hey, tell them about the music, how they can get a hold of us, all that jazz.
So if you'd like to get a hold of us, you can reach out to us at contact@creepgeeks.com. You can also reach out to us on Facebook. We have a very active Facebook page, that's Creep Geeks Podcast, and a very active Facebook group, Creep Geeks Facebook group. That's all you have to type. Join in. It's where we get a lot of our show ideas and have really active conversations about all the stuff we talk about. Now, all music in this podcast episode is licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license, or licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license, and all music is listed in the show notes for each episode.
Yeah.
Yep.
Heck yeah. If you want to give us a call, you can certainly give us a call and leave us a message. It's a free call. So if you have an idea or something you want to talk about or something you want to relay to us, you can certainly do that.
It's 575. It's 575-208-4025.
Very nice. Thank you very much. So there you go. Any questions, comments, concerns, please let us know. I do appreciate you sticking around, tuning in, and kind of hanging out with us. Episode number 100, very nice for us. Is a little bit of a milestone. So, and the podcast is growing, and it's because of listeners like you. So, very nice indeed. So, I think we're about done.
Yep.
All right. So, here we go. See you later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I like peanut butter.